Yeah. All right. We will start on page 165. Approximately a quarter down the page, the line begins with the word toivo. You have it? Yeah, everybody? Towards the end of the line. So the Rebbe is describing this whole time the function and the power of Das. And ultimately, that the final decision, the conclusive decision about the union is all in Das. And he described the various steps that it takes, the stages. First there is the understanding, which is not Das, and then it comes into Das when he connects to the Inyan to the point where the Inyan begins to settle in his mind. It becomes something that fits, so to speak, to his mind. The Inyan ha'achloto, this is where we're going to start. The Inyan ha'achloto shebedas, the aspect of hachloto means decision. Decision means that he had thrown off everything, all doubts, and made a decision. In other words, a decision can be made, from our experience, can be made as a tentative decision. It seems the right thing. 51% looks this way, so I'll go this way. It makes sense, but that's not a decision. There he is still weighing it. He's still watching his step. He's not going into it full force. Hachlota means that it is total and categorical. How does one come to hachlota shebedas? That he should have hachlota. Who? That is shehoinyan misames etzloi. That the inyan is substantiated. Misames comes from the word emes. Where is the other David?
He's not, you can't see by somewhere for a couple days.
Oh, okay. So Inyan Misames Etzli, the Inyan is substantiated in his mind. Excuse me? Misames. A simpler word?
Proven?
No. Is definite. It's an emes. Shehu kach, it becomes truth in his mind. Misames becomes truth in his mind that it is thusly. Vehu etzloi bipshitus. And this Inyan is so true, and it is important to understand this bipshitus. It is something that is simple and obvious. She'ein tzorich rayes vehechoches klal, where he no longer needs any proofs that this is so. He doesn't need any proofs anymore. Doesn't need any logical support for this inyan. The who, and that is, how does it reach that point? Mipnei ha'hakoro shemakir b'sichloi etzem ho'inyan. Because of the cognizance, recognition, that in his seichel he recognizes this etzem ho'inyan, the inyan as it is part of his seichel. She'alidei zeh, because he recognizes this inyan in his mind, then as a result, misames etzlei hadovor mo'id. This inyan becomes very true in his mind. Ve'im heyois. Even though she'ein ze adayon, that this is still not yet hahisamtus de bechinas re'iyo, the level of truth of re'iya of sight. Now I know that last time we discussed, and Noach, you pointed out to me that the Rebbe says that Hakora is of a lesser level than re'iya, and here the Rebbe says again the similar thing. The Hakora, that re'iya is a greater level of hisamtus than Hakora.
Hisamtus is a substantiation.
Right. Hisamtus comes from the word emes. I want to discuss this a little bit, and this re'iya being greater than Hakora, because it will leave some kind of confusion, because I said last time that Hakora is a deeper union. Let me explain what this is about. First of all, we have to identify and define the word emes. In our worldly experience, there isn't such an Indian that's called that this word emes would apply. Because everything in our worldly experience has a cause, has a reason why it is like that. If you say that the way to get from point A to point B is in a certain way, certain route, that's not truth. That's simply saying that these routes lead in the place where you want to go, and therefore you should go there. This is true this was called under circumstances. Under these circumstances, you're coming here from here, and you need to go there. Therefore, this is how you should go. Nothing to do with truth per se. Truth means we have to distinguish between the word true and truth. True is the result of various circumstances. Truth has nothing to do with circumstances. Truth is something that stands on its own. Like, for instance, and we're going to go to the real thing. It is true that God created the world. Why? Because the world didn't make itself. It had to be made. Therefore, it had to be created. And the Creator created it. So this is true because I see a world that does not explain on its own its existence. Therefore, I know that there is an ulterior reason why it's here. It's not from itself. This is called true. There's a process that leads you to a certain conclusion. It is not that you see in the world God's hand. You see that the world is a godly world. The world is not a godly world. The world is a physical world. But it has to be a reason why it's here, where it's coming from. Therefore, you have to resort to the only thing that can explain it. truth is something that does not depend on any kind of steps, any kind of proofs, any kind of circumstances. Such as, this is a little deep, but that is the real truth, that the presence of God is truth. Because we, in our souls, know the existence of God not because of any kind of experiments and experience, but because we actually, because God is a presence that could not be, therefore it is known directly. See, that's essential truth. We spoke about this several times in the past. You know, we say that if somebody says, I don't believe in God, we know that he is not telling the truth. What does it mean he's not telling the truth? It means that he is not in touch with his own beliefs. He doesn't realize what his real truth thinking is. Because in fact, someone who truly, God forbid, is not in touch with that aspect in his soul, to know that, to believe in God, to know God, he is not alive. He has no such thing as hope, such a thing as joy. There's no human experience beyond that. Except that he doesn't understand, he doesn't realize that this is where it's coming from. If a person would truly believe, in other words, not only believe externally, but would actually feel internally that there is no significance in life, there's no meaning in life, there's no God, life begins and ends in these 120 years. How can he experience joy? What's life? What's joy? He's a cockroach. There's nothing to it. So this Indian, this is a truth. In other words, whether he agrees with it or not, that's what he believes. It's impossible for him not to know this. That's called truth.
We spoke last time about how a person can bring to das, so to speak, in Yemen which are not true because of the contamination of his mind over however many years. It can't be the same thing that a person can actually contaminate his mind to such an extent where he truly believes that there's no existence of God. And we see a lot of people live their lives very miserably. So the idea that someone could live without joy and couldn't find the strength to get up out of bed in the morning, I mean, that's reality. A lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, that's not. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's one principle I have to say. We are not talking about a sick mind. We're talking about a normal human mind. Of course, it's possible. It's possible to be in the cemetery and you don't know anything. As long as you're alive in the true sense of living, you experience life, there's no way that you don't know God. You don't know what it is. You've never studied, never thought about it. It doesn't make sense to you. It makes no difference. But you still absolutely live with it. This is called truth. Now, in this truth, there are two levels. There is one called Hakora and one called Re'iyah. And the difference is that in Hakora means personal recognition. Personal recognition means this is my personal belief. Re'iyah, sight, means that I see it from an absolute, from a universal perspective. It's not my belief, but this is the truth as it is seen by all. There's no way. This is the truth itself, the absolute. Not because I see it, not because I experience it, not because this is my belief, but because I see that this is the truth and, in a universal level. We discussed the sense of re'iyah, the sense of sight, many times. That explained that sight is a supreme sense, beyond all others. In that, every other sense, like if you touch something and you know it's there, it is because you know how it affects you. Because it affects your hand, you feel cold, hot, rough, smooth, whatever it is, and that, because it affects you, that's how you know it's there. So this is knowing through personal experience. Whereas sight presents to you the world as it is unto itself, not because of how it affects you, not from your own experience. Because as a matter of fact, sight is the only sense of all the five senses that you know for sure that this exists without ever touching it, without smelling it, without any direct contact. How can you know for sure that something exists without any direct contact? Because you know it at a completely different level. You know it universally.
Isn't it the same direct contact as, say, a sound? I mean, you have to be exposed to something. You have to see it. The light refracts from the object to your eye, and it's a personal interaction with the object. It would be if you heard something.
Sound does not only reach you, sound affects you. This sight does not affect you. There's nothing compelling in sound, in sight. Sound, there is a compelling effect. It actually affects you. It disturbs you, you calm. Sight, there is nothing compelling. It's a perfectly passive relationship. This is just in order to explain the union of sight from your perspective, that there is a physical aspect in sight as well, because there's a physical light that deflects from the object. So therefore, I'm explaining that even there, even at that level, that is a physical light, it's still not something that's compelling. And we explained many times that also the only one of the senses that can be completely closed off is sight.
What do you mean closed off?
You can close your eyes and not see. You can close your ears and not hear. You can stuff your ears and then still you will hear. Because sight is not a direct contact. You're completely free of it. You see it, you want to see it, you see it. Don't want to see it, you don't see it. That's one second. I want to develop a little bit further what Moshe said. However, it's true that there is a physical process inside, because it's a physical site. There has to be a physical process. However, even in our own observation, every other sense, the physical process is something that is obvious to us. We actually experience the physical process. If you ask any child, how did you hear? Oh, the sound came to me. Whereas inside, there isn't that sense of experience that a light comes to my eye. You don't sense the fact that I see it where I am and the light came to me. I see it where the object is. I don't see it where I am. I see it where it is. That's our perception. And the explanation for this is, since you made this point, the explanation for this is that in fact, because the sight is processed at a completely different level in the mind, so that inside we relate to the reality itself. We relate to the watch as it is, where it is, not as it affects me. Why? Because sight is that which gives us a sense of reality. There is a real world. How do I know? I see it. If I smell it, I know there's a smell. But it's not it's not real. It's only the way it affects me. If I hear it, I know there is a sound. But it's not real. In other words, I don't relate to it as a reality itself. I relate to it only because it affects me. I know it's coming from someplace. Inside, it has nothing to do with how it affects me. It is the reality itself. This is why, explained many times, this is why a Summa Rahman, somebody who is, God forbid, blind, he is part of all the mitzvahs. Why? Because the whole union of mitzvahs is the union of Bechira, that you could yes do or not do. He has a Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov. But someone who is blind, Rahman and son, he doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. He does not have a Yetzer Hara. How come? What happened to Yetzer Hara? In order to desire anything in the world, it has to be real. A person doesn't desire a fictitious existence. An imagery. You want something that's real. And someone who does not see, God forbid, he doesn't have a real world.
Doesn't that make sight most compelling then?
Excuse me?
Doesn't that make sight most compelling? That if he can't see, God forbid.
It is compelling, absolutely. It is compelling from a different perspective. It's not compelling on a physical level. It's compelling on an intellectual level. I cannot possibly deny the reality. Okay, but it's not forcing. Compelling is perhaps a more, you're right. The word compelling is a more general. It's not forcing itself on you. It's compelling intellectually, absolutely. It's nothing that's compelling more than sight. Yes, you wanted to say something.
You mentioned the idea about kata is the idea of a truth is to me, and that re'iyah is the idea of truth as it exists independently. Like re'iyah, like we see something, it exists independently of us, and so. But
I know it independently of my own experience. I know the truth itself.
But how is it? If it's only true based on my own experience, so then isn't that not necessarily the definition of truth is truth has to be, truth by its nature has to be independent of my existence.
Well, this is what the Rebbe says. This is what the Rebbe says. Hakora is a hisamtus. To me, this is truth. But it's not on the level of Re'iyah. Because Re'iyah means that it's not just a truth because I am convinced of it, but it is a truth in an absolute sense.
But how do you know that something is, how do you know that its truth is independent of you? I mean, because you perceive everything through your own lens.
You mean on the Hakora level?
I mean, how can you be sure that what you're experiencing is emes on the level of Riyah? Meaning, how do you know that you're not, that you, I think it's true, but then again, this might just be a cut-off, because I think everything.
Well, that's what the Re'iyah means. That's what the Re'iyah means. What makes you say that this watch is for sure there?
See.
What does that mean? Yeah, you see it. What does that mean? And that's what you're pointing out. I see it, which means it doesn't affect me, and yet it's there. That's what truth is. That's how I know it's absolutely true.
There's no confusion in Riyah.
There's no confusion in Riyah.
So then why is it that you said before that Hakara is on a higher level than Riyah?
Because that's where I'm coming to. So Hakara, in terms of how where it's coming from my soul, in other words, my personal experience, Hakara is deeper. Because Hakara means, like we explained all the time, that what is Hakara? How do you recognize something? If you've never seen it, that means that you've reached into your own soul and you've seen it before in the way it is in the soul. Re'iyah it's not from your own experience, from your own knowledge, but it is something that you have come to see. So therefore, in terms of his amtus, Re'iyah is greater. Is a higher level of his amtus. In terms of personal experience, Hakara is deeper.
In terms of what is Re'iyah deeper?
In terms of his samtus, in terms of recognizing the truth, this is an absolute truth.
Well, why is that the case? I mean, isn't the entire idea, the entire goal of learning Torah, the entire goal of everything is to get more in touch with truth, to get more in touch with Hashem. So seemingly, if you can come to a more what's the word you use, a more substantiated truth, shouldn't that ultimately have a greater effect on you? Shouldn't that be the ultimate goal?
You're talking about the Re'iyah.
To ultimately come to.
Well, that's what the Rebbe says. The Rebbe says that the Re'iyah is a greater level of his samtus. The reason I said originally that Hakara is deeper, I was talking from the perspective of the personal experience of the Neshama Nefesh. But in terms of his samtus, like we see in the Re'iyah itself. Like I said, Re'iyah, I see it, and I want to close my eyes, I don't see it. In other words, it's not something that's forcing itself on me. Whereas Hakara is something that is mine.
Maybe you say you can't close your eyes on Hakara?
You can't close your eyes on Hakara. This is my personal recognition.
So does Re'iyah transcend the person's perception? In terms of how does something affect me personally, and then I can mix in all my own cosmos into what I'm perceiving? Does Re'iyah transcend that, where it just, like you're saying, it exists by unto itself without your...
Right. Re'iyah is where you see it, you don't even know how come you see it. You don't even know how come you see it. Just like, we see the world, and after we see the world, and I'm talking about now on the lowest level, and then we ask, where is it coming from? In other words, without even having a reason, making sense, how come it's there, we see it. Which means that we see the reality itself. So in terms of his amtus, that's what he says, it's amtus. To know, to see that as a truth that you have in the ear, that is the highest level of his amtus. Okay, that's what he says. Even though this is still not the level of his amtus, of conviction, of clarity, of truth, of the aspect of Re'iyah, Mikomo kom still, Harei Zeh, Ki'ilu Roya Mamash. Ki'ilu, as if it were, that his mamash, he actually sees Mehus HaKoras Hadas. Mehus HaKoras Hadas means the essence of the Hakora, of the recognition that's in Das. The word Mehus has a very rich meaning in Chassidus, and especially in this context. Having explained the inner of Re'iyah, like we said, that in Re'iyah I see it not because it affects me, but because I know this is true, I see the truth itself. That's called Mehus. You see the way the inyan is unto itself. Metzius is how it affects me. Like for instance, if I want to walk from here to there, across a room, and I see a table in the middle, I don't care whether it's a table, a chair, or anything else. There is a mitzvah, there is an object there that's blocking me from walking through, and I have to go around it. So that there's no, it's not that I have to walk around it because there is something real there and I can't walk through it, I can't disturb it or anything like that. It's not out of respect for the table that I'm going around. It's just blocking my way. That's called mitzias. Mehus is when you relate to the essence. What is the object? What is its truth? Why is it there? That's called Mehus. And in Hakora, this is where Mehus, that level of truth, as called Mehus, begins to surface. Where there is an aspect of the truth of the inyan as it is unto itself, the real truth, not just how it affects me, not just the mitzvah of it. Okay? V'kasher oise ho'inyan. And when that inyan, nirgash beliboy, begins to be felt in his heart. Okay? We have to notice here. This hergish halev comes from hakora, not from Re'iyah. Because Re'iyah could be quite objective. Yes, this is the absolute truth. But how does it touch me? Hakora, this is my truth. So when this this Hakora is it begins to be felt in the heart, nirgash beliboy, begins to be felt in the heart. Nas, so then it affects, it creates gam his spoilers halev be'ahava v'yira. Then this also results that will be his spoilers halev, that the heart itself becomes affected, becomes aroused be'ahava v'yira with a response of ahava, of a positive or a negative relationship. Now, this is spoilers halev. We mentioned in the past that the principal difference between the mind and the heart, the way things are on intellectual level, and the way they are in the heart and on the emotional level. In the intellect, one can do investigation, trial and error, figure things out. He finds his way around doing various routes. You know, this is right. What's called process of elimination. The heart does not respond to logic. So listen, you know God created the world, because where else is it coming from? That makes sense to the mind. That doesn't have to do with the heart. The heart only responds to something that touches it, just like my hand touches the cup. It gets a direct touch. And this is what happens in the Hakora in Das. Once it reaches Hakora in Das, then it no longer, as we said before, it no longer depends on any reason, proofs. He knows directly the Inyan. And that's when he gets touched by the Inyan. And once he gets touched with the Inyan, he can begin to feel it in his heart. He feels the effects of it. And that's when Abba comes, surfaces, becomes created. Thus, we have the full cycle, the full process, I should say, of Seichel, from Chochmah and Bina into Das, and then that brings this Seichel to the heart, to personal experience, to an excitement. Okay? Now, we're going back to explain something that was a question that was brought up, a rhetorical question that was brought up 2 pages ago. This is the whole discussion of Das, the whole elaboration on Das came with the intent of explaining this principle. V'zehu. And this is the meaning. This is what we mean, and this is the reason. The moyach hadas hu neged hametzach. The moyach hadas is facing the metzach we learned in the previous ois. Metzach means the forehead. Neged HaMetzach, it's facing the forehead. This V'zehu means this is the reason, this is the point. What is it pointing to? It's pointing to the fact that ultimately Das brings the inyan to the heart and creates the midas. Because that Das creates the midas, this is why Das is neged hametzach. The chol inyan hamidas. Because being that the whole inyan of midos, whole inyan ha-toikif. Midos is the inyan of toikif. Toikif means force. Midos is the inyan ha-toikif. What does that mean? In contrast to reason, to intellect. In intellect, there's always a slew of variations. I can approach it this way, I can approach it this way. This makes sense, this makes sense. I can investigate, I can even think and try to explain and understand an opinion quite opposite of mine. That's the way it is in the mind. The mind is very open. It doesn't have this force. No, this is the way it is. Where is this the force is really surface? That's in the midas. What does the word midah mean? Measure. What is the idea of a measure? What does it mean it's a measure? Measure means something that's focused. You know what focused means? Is directed exactly, precisely. That's what I'm meaning. The whole seichel and the whole perception that one has, I see the whole world. When I'm decided I'm going this way, that's called a midah. In order to make that decision, you have to have the strength of decision. One of the difficulties in life is to be able to make a decision. Why? Because why should I go this way? I should go this way. Maybe I should go this way. The whole world is open to me. You have to have a certain strength of character, a certain strength of conviction, and essentially this is in the heart, where you focus in and say, no, this is it. My whole comprehension, my entire intellect is now nisamtzim. Something means is contracted and focused on this one point. This is the midas. That's why midas is called toikif.
Understand what's the connection between that? Because a midah denotes that it's set in a particular direction. It's got force. It is directed. It's not.
He doesn't get distracted this way or that way. Not to be distracted requires force of conviction. Stick with it.
But a midah can be transformed.
Not allowing doubt. What?
A midah can be transformed, though.
Yes, midah can be transformed with the force of seichel and so forth, but the root of the power of midas is rooted, it says, in das and in rotzen, in metzach, as we're going to see. Yeah, da.
As opposed to you were saying that you can't make a decision come from your too
No.
much like consideration is this way or that.
That's right. Making a decision on the basis of reason, as I said before, you can make a decision, but it's always going to be on the basis of majority opinion. It seems that way. This appears to be the right way. It's not. This is the right way. This is the right way. This is where we come in Das. And that's where you have the strength of making a decision.
So the skill of decision making would come through a development of someone's doubt.
Right. This is why, I'm sure you heard the expression, abar das. What's a bar das? Why don't you say a bar chochma, a bar bina? He can be a chochem and a maven, but that doesn't make him a mensch. What makes him into a mensch? The classical term a mensch is das. He can follow through and lead a life and do his thing. Doesn't get swayed and is not being blown away with every wind. Okay, so the whole in Hamid the whole power of midas is the union of toikef, as we explained now. Lochein, for this reason, shayach halinyan hametzach. That's why it relates to the union of metzach. Shahu choizek v'toikef. That's what metzach represents. The choizek v'toikef, strength and power. L'rak, except sheyesh beis eifanei teikev. There are two eifanim, two levels, two modes in strength. That which we mentioned in the beginning of the Maimer, and this is where we're going to explain that. V'hei, which are mitzcho de zo, or mitzcho de atiko. The metzach, the strength or the forehead of zo, and the strength of atik. We know that the koiches hanefesh in a person, there are really three levels in koiches hanefesh. There is the seichel, there is the midos, and then above all that, there is what's called the rotzei. Without rotzoi, let's say a person has to sit down to learn. Even to learn, one has to make a decision what he is going to learn. There is so much to learn. In order to be able to concentrate and say, this is what I'm going to learn, you have to have a decision. You have to have a willpower. This is what I'm going to learn. In every activity of a person, there is the rotzei. A person who does not have, as a shalom, the power of rotzei, who will, his life can just flow from one thing to another all by itself, automatically. I sleep and I sleep and sleep until I get tired of sleeping. Then I get up. Then I'm up and up and up and up until I get tired of being up and I go to sleep. There's no guidance at all. There's no focus whatsoever. Rotzoin is what gives a person a sense that he is for real, and he wants to do that which is right and real. And then it goes into the seichel to decide what is right and real. And then afterwards, as we said, described now, that from seichel come midos, and midos is also requires the decision, it represents the decision and the strength of conviction, strength of decision, which again relates back to the aspect of Rotz. In middle between the higher Rotzen and the lower Rotzen, the essential Rotzen and the Midas Rotzen, there is a Seichel, which is versatile and varied and can go through an investigative process and see two opposite ideas, and they both make sense to you. Okay.
The seichel is like an intermediary between the midas and the rotzain.
Right.
Is it also is it a composite of the two of them? Is the seichel made up in itself a little bit of rotzain and a little bit of midas, or is it just between the both?
No, absolutely. Anything that brings two together has to have both. Chochma and Bina have more to do with that which is higher than Seichel with Rotzen, and Das has more to do with it. And this is what we are first now being introduced here, that there is mitzvah de Zoh or mitzvah de Atika. Zoh is midas. I'm sure you know, right? Zoh is referred to as Ze'er Ampin, the midas datzilus. And Atik, that refers to the Rotzein, that which is higher than is Keser. The Hine is Rotzein, the is Rotzein. This is Loshen HaSayah. It says the is Rotzein, the is Rotzein. There is two types of Rotzein. There is a Rotzein, there's another Rotzein. There are two different worlds of Rotzein. Is Rotzein Shalamatum en HaSeichel. There is a Rotzein that is below Seichel. The is Rotzein Shalamaylo me HaSeichel. And there's a Rotzein that is above Seichel. And both are called Rotzein because they both have the power of Rotzein, but they're in two different levels completely. Well, I think that what comes now, we have to stop, right? 5:30. What comes now? I guess they're going to stop.
We're going to have Tanya eventually.
They start Tanya between 5:45 and 6.
You want to continue a little more? Huh? Yes, yes. I need a consensus.
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I have to go to warm up food for dinner.
I didn't hear what you said, but you have to go. All right.
I have to
There goes the consensus. Thanks a lot, Mayor.
warm up food for dinner.
We're up to
Oh, the dinner. No, it's important.
Yeah.
support.
Okay, yeah.
You also agree, right?
Yeah, the consensus is now shifting towards Mayor.
All right. So we have what the Chazer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had a chance to review it yesterday and it made a big difference. Like I took much more.
Oh, it's very important.
Yeah.
Please.
I was like, I don't know what happened. Like I was like the first couple classes, like I wasn't.
But you have.
I couldn't get into.
First of all, it's on the internet, you know.
Yeah.
It's on the website. It's on the archives. You can listen over. You have notes.
I just think last week, I was just like coming back after the prayer.
You're crazy, man.
But you do have chazon, right? You do have.
I don't have a verse right
Yeah,
now.
they do.
You have to shut off the recorder.
I guess I do have a verse. I have it when he gets back.
When he gets back.